Hello, everyone. It's your girl Tracy, and welcome back to another episode of the Lady Black Kaleidoscope Project. Yay! So, today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite things in the entire world, friendship. Today, well, technically yesterday, because it's after midnight here, but I count it as still, the sun hasn't risen, so it's still night to me. So yesterday, Thursday, July 30th, is known as the International Day of Friendship. So yay for that. Friendship is incredible. And I want to start off with this quote: rare as is true love, true friendship is rarer. Jean de La Fontaine. French. Pardon my French. so, so it's a little loopy because it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. So anyway, so yes, true friendship is very rare. It is. If you're lucky to come across one friend that you really connect with, and it can be in any form. I mean, for some people it's a pet, for some people it's their spouse, sometimes it is the same sex friend, it's opposite sex friend. It's it can be a parent, it can be your child, it can be another relative. It can come in any form. Of course, your friendship with yourself should be paramount, because you got to be friends with yourself, because you are literally all you have. You enter this world by yourself, and you're going to leave by yourself. So it's important that you are, ultimately friends with yourself. Because with Oscar Wilde, like he says, to love oneself. Here we go. To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance, and that is so true. You gotta love yourself if you're gonna really attract those type of friends and the type of love that you want. I think a lot of times we put more emphasis into romantic love than platonic love, and and that it's so important to have that, especially in the foundation of any good relationship is being friends with your partner. So it's very, very important to have that, and it's just good to have friends. It's good to have people in your life who have your back, who care for you, who love you. Most of us have 150 people in our social network, and probably we only have around 3 to 5 people that you would consider close friends. What's sad now, not pre-corona, people have said that they have less friends. They're incredibly lonely, and it's so funny because we're so much more connected through the internet, through social media, but people feel more alone. They feel so much alone. I think that has to do with the lack of touch. We need touch, and virtually you can't get that touch, which is why it's so hard with during this pandemic that people can't touch each other. They can't hug each other. They can't do that. I mean, you might be able to do it with the few people. If you have people that you're with, you can do that. And if you have a pet, that's why so many people have adopted pets, because we need that touch. We need that because that's what helps us feel connected. And so, as great as technology is, it's good if you have long distance friends or long distance relationships. I have a lot of long distance friends. Having the internet allows me to keep in touch with them. I just got the internet in my house, and so it's really been nice. I've been able to video chat people from like India and like LA, and it's been really cool to be able to see their faces. It's so exciting. I guess I'm a little behind the times, but which I'll probably talk about in another episode. But it's really cool to have that connection. So, there's a great book that I have always read that I've gotten, I don't know, several years ago. And it's a photo essay book called Best Friends. And it's by Sharon J. Woolmuth and Carolyn Saline. And it's a photo essay. They have Kevin Bacon, Philadelphian, and his brother, Michael. And it has other people in there. It's not just famous people. They have Jennifer Aniston, her friend who is not famous. And all these, so like that. Jennifer Aniston and stuff. So they have other, non-famous people, and they have best friends in different forms. Like one was like him and his grandmother. Another one was a woman and her dogs, like all different kinds of best friends, sisters, brothers, people who were like frenemies, but they became friends, interracial friendships. Here's the thing about interracial friendships. They just like true, just like the quote, interracial friendships are rare. Interracial romantic relationships are rare, but friendships are, I think, probably even rarer in some ways, because just a statistic, I don't like, there are things that are very white centered, but this statistic was centered on white people. But 75% of white people in America only have white friends. So, and anecdotally, I know 25%, that 25% who don't, they probably only have one or two friends of color. And the other statistic is that 91% of white people, not 91% of white people, if you look at the average white person in America, 91% of their friends are white. I mean, that's sad. And I think, especially in these times when we're trying to work on the racial divide and to kind of bring us together, friendship is so important. And you need to be able to relate. There's a new book out called by a black woman and a white woman who have the podcast Call Your Girlfriend, and they wrote a book. It's called like Big Friendships Made or something. I forget the title. You can Google it. And it's about interracial friendship and how it, there's always this kind of divide, and it's interesting. But, most of my friends are not black. They're not of my race. I have multiracial friends. I have a lot of white friends, or at least acquaintances. And I have very few friends that people I consider close who are white. Most people I consider close are people of color. But I do have one or two that I feel pretty close to who are white. But we need to have, and I think we need to build that trust, because I think if we can, just as it can, interracial romantic relationships can work, interracial friendships, I think that's so important, that we need to be talking to each other and having different experiences. So awesome. I'm so grateful for my friends who are not of my race or who are from just a different background from me, because I've learned so much from them. And I think that's so important, having interracial friendships. I think it's not always the easiest, because you are coming from different backgrounds, and we all have our biases and everything like that we have to work through. But it's good having that foundation of trust and openness and compassion towards each other, so you can really build it. It is possible. It might be harder than, say, a same-race relationship, but it's so worth it, having people just to have that different perspective. And you have things in common. Usually, it's like you're usually brought together because of a shared interest. So that's cool to have that. So, yes, about that. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my little thing with friendship. When I was... I've always kind of struggled having friends, not because I'm antisocial or anything. It's just that I was always in these different, I was always kind of the odd man out, because I was in these all white environments, like I was talking about before, and because I went to all white schools, and so I kind of struggled in my K-12 to meet people that I had things in common with. I had some people that but it was always within school, it wasn't outside of context. And then I went to college, and then it totally exploded, because I was in an environment where it was cosmopolitan. People, it was New York City, people from all over the country, all over the world, and I met amazing people there, and I had a lot of great friends. And then I had to move back home because I couldn't afford to stay in New York, and so I moved back home, and I struggled again. And Philadelphia is a great city, and I'm going to talk about that tomorrow in the next episode. But it's not the greatest fit for me. It's a very segregated black white town, and I'm someone who is like this kaleidoscope. Hello, name of the show. And it's hard for me to meet people who I can show parts of me to people, because I feel like, but I can't show all of me. And in New York, I felt like I could show a lot more of me. And so I kind of struggled with that. And when I moved back home, I didn't really have any friends because of my situation in high school, which I talked about yesterday, and which was very tough and hard. If you haven't seen it, it was really rough for because I was ostracized, and I was a floater. I was seen as popular because I knew everyone, but I didn't really have any great friends outside of high school. So when I moved back home, I didn't have anybody. And I met some people through City Year, but they were white, and we just had totally different backgrounds. Like I'm a city girl, born and raised in West Philly, and like they lived there. A lot of them were from the Midwest, a lot of them from small towns in rural Pennsylvania. Like we had different backgrounds. I mean, we were friendly, but we just never really were able to find like really super, super close common ground. But they were friendly at the time, and I mean, luckily, most people that I've met in my life have been friendly people. They have been nice people. A lot of people, some people have not had that luck, but I'm grateful that pretty much everyone that I met was a good person. Like they were good people. They just weren't the right fit for me. Because as an only child, you're always looking for like sibling friends, sister friends, brother friends. Like you're always looking for those type of friends because you don't have siblings. So I'm always on the lookout for that, and it's been really hard. I haven't really found that type of friend yet. That sister friend, that sibling friend. So anyway, but friendship comes in different forms. I hope to get a dog. That's like my lifelong dream, to get a dog. Like my vision for my life is like to be in a big old backyard, because I live in the city, so I didn't really have a backyard, and be rolling in the grass playing with my dogs. Like that is like it. That is like the vision for my life, or one of the big visions. I have a lot of other big visions, but that's like one of the major ones. Just having dogs. Oh my god, I love anyone who has a dog. I'm such a dog person. I'm not a cat person, but I'm a dog person. My mom won't let me get a dog because we don't have room. So because our house is pretty small. So anyway, okay. So when I was 30, I was frustrated with the way my life was going. I just ended several friendships that I had, and they were all white and with white people, and I was just sick of it. I was tired all the trauma that I had dealt with high school, and just being the racial trauma, the discrimination. I felt it just was like, and just dealing with my grandmother's death, and then my mom's ups and downs professionally in her job, and everything just kind of built up to me. So when I was 30, I was like, I'm done with people. I can't stand people. Because people didn't react well to all my stuff because they were young. They hadn't, fortunately for them, they didn't have any of that struggle, so they couldn't really relate to me having all this struggle. And I was upset at the way they were reacting, and I was just like, I hate people. I'm done. I'm tired of dealing with white people because I'm tired of having to hold myself back. And so I was just like, I'm done. I'm done with people. So I just hung out and took classes. And I had a moratorium meeting new people. I was just like, I'm just going to take class. I met a few people, but they were acquaintances. And then that was it. It was done. And I had all my male friends when I was 30. They were no longer. They were either very distant physically, or just we weren't friends anymore. And I was looking I needed that male energy for the first time in my life. I didn't have that male that male energy in any way, shape, or form. So I was just like, I need male energy. So of course, my only child self, I was like, oh, get an imaginary friend. But I was 30. I was like, okay, I need to up my game a little bit. So I got an imaginary friend who's real, who actually exists. So I'm like, who can I do that with? I'm like, oh, celebrities. Okay, let me go through all these celebrities. So I vetted different celebrities, and so it might surprise you who I ended up with, but the person that I was like, okay, and I'll talk about that process, how that happened when I do my countdown. The person was Henry Cavill. What? That's crazy. And we're wearing blue. We're matching. I did that on purpose because, he's my BFF in my head. And a lot of the ink that I'm writing with is blue because that's his favorite color. And it's my favorite color too. Oh my God, we're twins. Totally. Right? Not really. Not really. Not at all. Actually, no. So, yeah. So I'm going to tell you why in a second. But anyway, the thing why I was watching a lot of Turner Classic Movies, right? And if you don't know who this guy is, if you should know, because he's Superman. He's the most current, well, not the movie Superman, not Taylor Hoechlin, but he's The Witcher. currently on Netflix. I have not watched it because I don't have Netflix because it's too much money. But I've seen clips and it's good. My boy's good. So, anyway, so I was watching a lot of Turner Classic Movies, and I saw like Bullitt and The Magnificent Seven, and it featured this actor Robert Vaughn, and he always in the movies he played a coward, and I was like, Mom, is there a time when Robert Vaughn is not playing a coward? And she's like, yeah, actually, it's he was in this show called The Man from U.N.C.L.E. from the 1960s, and I was like, oh, okay, didn't think anything of it. Then the next week I got my Entertainment Weekly, and I opened to this page, and it said Henry Cavill is the Man from U.N.C.L.E. I was like, what? This is a sign. This is a sign that we're going to be BFFs in my head. So that's how I like kind of got into him, and of course with anything like I did with the Beatles, I wanted to learn everything about him. I was like, I'm going to learn everything. I got articles, interviews, everything like that. It's kind of cagey in terms of like he doesn't open up about it, which is fine, you know. But as much as I could, I was like, oh my god, Henry, you're like great, and we have some things in common. Like we both were fat kids. I'm still a fat kid, but it's awesome, whatever. And he was, you know, kind of ostracized. He had a rough go at school and boarding school, and I had a rough go definitely in high school. And it was cool because it's like at the same time because we're the same age. So that was kind of cool. And then he struggled professionally too. So, which was that gave me comfort because a lot of my friends when I was in my 20s, they were doing great professionally, and I was struggling professionally, so no one could relate to me. And I feel like, oh, he would understand me. He could understand dealing with that. And yeah, and then he's into ancient history, and I love ancient history. I was force-fed Latin by my mom. I mean, she just like she had Latin in high school. We had books. We had all these ancient myths and everything like that. And you know, and if I had to do it over again, I would major in sociology and maybe in classics. I took 2 classics classes in college. I took classics in film and in Roman history. It was totally fascinating. That period is totally fascinating. I mean, it's kind of crazy because the Romans were nuts, and I think it was meant to be that I was into Latin because my first trip ever was to Italy when my mom was 2 months pregnant with me. Okay, so let me get started with the 10 reasons why Henry Cavill is my BFF in my head. So, starting with number 10. He's from Jersey. The other one. Okay, here's the story. When I was 6 years old, my mom got me a book about animals, and I flipped through it, and they had a thing about cows, and they talked about cows from Guernsey and Jersey. I focused on Jersey because like, oh, I recognize the word because of New Jersey, which is my next door neighbor, from Pennsylvania, where I'm from. But in my 6-year-old self, 7-year-old self, I was like, no, there's no other Jersey but New Jersey. I refuse to accept anything else. I don't know why I was so insistent on that, but I just was. I'm sorry, people from Jersey. I'm sorry, Henry. Whatever. So I totally just was like, no, there's just Jersey. They're from Jersey. They're from New Jersey. I just refused to do that. Fast forward, I was 26, 27 years old. There was a book called, The Lonely Planet World Book, and I had to talk about all the different countries in the world. And Jersey was listed as one of like the principalities or whatever, one of the islands, and I was just like, see, and I felt all smug, right? Because I was like, oh, I know that it exists. I totally know that. Look at me, I'm all important and smug, you know, because I know that. So I did acknowledge that Jersey exists. So there's progress. But then I was like, okay, well, there's only 10 people that live on the island, and they take care of the cows. And then I was like, oh no, Tracy, that's not being realistic. So I upped it to like 100. Fact is, there is 100,000 people, I think, in Jersey now. So has been. So it's way bigger than I thought. So Henry, you are not the first famous person that I knew from Jersey, because cows are people, right? Because they give us milk, and you know. So he's the second famous person. So Jersey, I'm sorry to all those people in Jersey. I'm sorry. I was six. Give me a break. Okay. Number 9. May 5th, 1983. Okay, as like I said, we're the same age, and I love that. I think there's something to be said about being friends with someone your age. I always struggled with that in school because as an only child, you're kind of the oldest and the youngest, so you tend to relate to people who are older than you and younger than you. And I always struggle with people my own age. Most of my friends, I have only a couple friends who are my exact age, so I always have room for more. So he's, that person. I'm like, oh yay, you were the same age. I think it's something special about you turning the same age at the same time, and you're going through the same things at the same time. So it's nice. Plus his birthday, Cinco de Mayo. What? That matters in America. It only doesn't matter here. But that's cool. And 1983. And I said best birthday ever because it's Cinco de Mayo, and your half birthday is on bonfire night in Britain. So that's awesome. And outside of my birth and all the people who came before me, my parents and all my ancestors, Jesus' birth, those are the only other important birthdays besides mine. Besides that, I don't know. Whatever. My friends' birthdays too. Okay. Number 8. He hired a Latina to be his manager. That might not be a big deal to you, but for a woman of color, it's a big deal. You don't really hear white men hiring Latinas to manage their entire career. I could be wrong, but the way that the feelings and all the stereotypes and stuff in this country, at least, I mean, he's British, so that might help. But that's awesome. Danny Garcia, that's his manager. She was The Rock's ex-wife, and still his manager, which is kind of cool that they get along. And they co-parent a daughter. But anyway, that's really cool that he was forward-thinking enough, and it didn't matter. He just wanted the best person for the job, and they've been together, for a while, the manager and him. So I think that's all Danny and him. I think that's awesome. That shows some, progressiveness. I mean, he loves tradition, but it shows that, that's surprising. He keeps us on his toes. Good job, Henry. Number 7, his social media. His social media, what I love about Henry, one of the major things I love about him is that he was slow to join social media. I like that he took his time, because I'm someone who took my time. I had Facebook. I only just got Instagram and Twitter, because social media is not everything, and I love that it is. I love that he puts what he puts on what he puts on. I don't need to know every little thing about people. When people do that, I'm just kind of like, I don't need to know every little thing about you. Even though he's my BFF in my head, I still don't need to know everything about you. So I like that he has a healthy distance, and he always features his dog Cal. Look at that dog. Oh my God, what is up with the wind? Look at that. Isn't that cute? I always show these pictures of Cal to my mom because she's terrified of big dogs because she had an experience with a Rottweiler. So I'm always like, Mom, look, it's Cal. And stuff. And he always does, it shows his humor, which is very subtle and hilarious. And so this is hilarious because look at it. His eyes are like open. And it's nice that he has this Chiefs hat on. And the only reason why I cheered for the Chiefs for the Super Bowl is because their coach was Andy Reid, and he was the former coach for the Eagles, because I'm an Eagles girl. Fly, Eagles, fly. EAGLES, Eagles. So that's good. And plus he likes horses, right? I love horses, but they don't love me for some reason. Maybe it's because I'm fat. Maybe because I'm big. But Henry, he's really good with horses, so maybe we can have a horse whisperer. Maybe we can have a horse intervention or something. I don't know. So maybe that would be good. Okay. Number 6. Sorry. He's an anachronism in the best way possible. He totally is. He is like totally an anachronism in the best way possible. As I repeat myself. But he is. Like, he's just totally just like the way he carries himself, he just seems like he belongs in another time. And I love that. I love that he is just very, in some ways he's really traditional, and he's just the way he carries himself, he's just very masculine. He has a lot of, that kind of gravitas and energy, which you just don't see in guys these days. And so it's just nice. He just seems like he's out of time. just odd, but it's wonderful and it's amazing, and I love that. Number 5, his speaking voice. Don't underestimate the power of a speaking voice. Like, if someone has a really good speaking voice, it's great. It's deep, it's British, his accent is clear, and it's great. And it's not just his actual speaking voice, but what comes out of that voice. Just his, that's what she said. That's what, it just, his intelligence, he's so articulate, he's so well spoken, he's so polite, and and I love interviews where they actually like ask him questions outside of like his physical routine and what he does, because he's a really smart person. You're a really smart kid, Henry, and and I love when because like when someone asks him a smart question, he gives a really insightful answer. So like if you want to watch a really good interview, recently he was on Actors with Sir Patrick Stewart, and it was amazing. It was a great conversation. It was like an hour, and it was so good. You could just like Sir Patrick Stewart is going to ask really smart questions because he's Sir Patrick Stewart. It's Captain Picard. So great. I just love how he's so articulate and he's so well spoken. I mean, Patrick Stewart, of course, but Henry is, and it's just he seems like the coolest person. Someone you want to have a conversation with. That's why I have conversations with him in my head. Because that's what only children do. We talk to ourselves. So I talk to Henry. Number 4. He owns his geekiness. I mean, the man built a freaking PC. Like, who does that? Who does that? That's amazing. Wow. Like, I was just like, that is badass, And I just love that he just stands in his truth. And I love that he's like, I'm a geek. I build on computer. I'm baking. I'm painting little figurines. That's what he's been doing during quarantine. I'm like, that's amazing. And he, he's a gamer. I mean, which is like, I know playing The Witcher is like a dream. Like, because he like fought to get it, which is awesome. And I really like that he did that. And so, like, he just owns his geekiness. I mean, he loves ancient history. He reads fantasy books. Like, I mean, those are stereotypically geeky things, but he just owns that he owns whatever he is, and he stands in that, and I love that. I love people who stand in their truth. That's why I'm doing this channel, because I'm standing in my truth. So I love people who do that. Thank you for doing that, Henry. Keep on doing that, because it inspires a lot of people. Number 3. He's a big kid. He has hung out with Muppets. Henry has hung out with Muppets. I love Muppets. Muppets are everything to me. So anyone who does that is automatically, you're just going to be a friend of mine. But the way I love seeing him, I mean, he's courteous to all his fans and stuff, but when he's with fans that are kids, his face lights up, and it's so great. I love someone who's really good with children, because I love kids, and I just, I've worked with kids, and and the thing that made me love him so much was this picture that I cannot find, like actual physical picture you can find on the internet, is him dressing up as Tigger. And people have always seen me as Tigger, which I'm like, what? Because if you can't tell, I have a big personality. And so it's really great to see that, and see him being willing to like dress up in a Tigger onesie for a good cause, because it's for the charity that he does, the Darrell Zoo. And I acted, and for me, it's like another thing we have in common, because I acted like a fool when I was in college for a dance marathon. I was the morale chair for 1 year, and then I just basically, I was always the morale chair, whether it was, I had other positions, but I always acted like a fool for good causes. It raised money for pediatric AIDS, and so I would just wear hot pink leghorns. I would just wear crazy color combinations. So seeing him do that, that's what solidified it for me. Like, seeing that picture, I was like, that's it. Team Cavill, I'm done. Like, you're my BFF in my head. That's it. You win, because you get me as your BFF. And I win because I get you as my BFF in my head. So yeah, I just love that he's a big kid. And I love that, because that just, he has a silly side. It's subtle, but it's there. And I love people who don't lose that inner child. Just because you're grown up doesn't mean you have to be all like serious all the time. You can be a kid, and you should always remain that, and embrace your inner child. There you go. Number 2, speaking of subtlety, his subtlety. As I said, I have a huge personality, and I didn't really appreciate subtlety. Henry had to grow on me, because at that point in my life, when I was like in my early 30s, I was just starting to appreciate subtlety. I was kind of in my zone and in my place, and I had to learn how to appreciate subtlety. I mean, even when I was growing up, I was a very literal thinker, and my mom would get comments about me in school saying that Tracy struggles with subtlety. Tracy struggles with inferences, reading between the lines. I always struggled with that until recently, by doing all this inner work that I had to do over the last 7 years. I've really learned to appreciate subtlety, and so I really appreciate that in Henry. Like, he's very underrated as an actor and as a person. I think people just look at him as a body, and they don't see his talent, and just him as a human being. He's not boring. A lot of people say he's boring. Like, his humor is dry, and it's witty, and it's subtle, and but if you just, eyes are the window to the soul. But if you look at his eyes are very mischievous, and they're very, there's a sparkle to them. And I really love that, because that always reminds me of my grandmother, who had, she always had that kind of sparkle in her eye, and that mischief in her eye. And I love that in people, and he has that. So that kind of reminds me of my grandma. And I think that's really cool. You don't have to be the loudest person in the room to have the most effect. Sometimes you do, because I'm loud and I hope to have an effect, but I've really liked that I've learned to really appreciate his subtlety. And I think Americans struggle with that, because we're so loud and in your face, and British, he has more of that reserve and more of that containment and that cool, calm collectedness. But that's great. We need that. We need people like that. Not everybody is going to be screaming loud. We need people like that. So I really appreciate his subtlety. I have to show you this picture. This kind of shows it right here, which I think is hilarious. So there he is, looking all James Bondish, and he's looking all like, all coiffed and cool and everything. And then there we go. You got a crooked bow tie. I was like, yes, because he looks so. I love people who look perfect and then they have something wrong. That is just the best. You never see that in a Hollywood star. So I love that he's comfortable. He probably didn't intend it that way, but I love that. It's my favorite picture of him, because it's so. That's so. I think that shows just him. I think his subtlety. His humor is subtle. It's there, and you might just look at his body and how like buff he is and how he has the beard and he's like, oh, but I just look at that bow tie and how it's crooked. I think that's so great. So anyway, so the number 1 reason why Henry is my BFF in my head is shared values. Yes. Let me tell you, it is really, I read this in a book called like 30 Rules for Loving. And I think and it's applicable. It was about romance, but I think it's applicable to friendship as well. Like, you can have different interests, you can have different backgrounds, you can have different personalities, different temperaments, but the one thing that you have to share in order to have a close, committed relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship, is shared values. You got to have people who have similar values to me. I've always struggled in finding people who have similar values to me, because my values are kind of all over the place, because I'm a kaleidoscope. But Henry is someone who has very, like, I was surprised. And what actually really even turned me on to him is, it was a slow burn with Henry. There was always these like pivotal moments where I was like, oh, okay. And because typically I'm all like, fast and furious with friends, and I end up burning out. But with Henry, it was definitely a slow burn. But anyway, as I said, I was in a kind of down place in my life. I just lost my faith in people, particularly white people, and just was really low. And I read this article from Man from Uncle, and he talked about
integrity. And I never heard anyone my age even say that word, and he said it. He said integrity is like having work ethic. His work ethic is bananas, which is amazing and so admirable. And he talked about how you can't take it with you. Like, you can have all the money, you can have a wife and kids and all those things, but the only thing that you have left at the end of your life is integrity, and your integrity. And that's his priority, maintaining integrity and having honor and loyalty and humor. And he said that his family, his parents, his brothers, he talks about them all the time. So I love that family matters to him, because I feel like in our generation, the millennial generation, family is not the biggest thing. A lot of people live away from their families. There are people, of course, who live with their families, but family is not as big. It's more about exploration and travel and like chosen families instead of your actual family. And Henry really values his actual family, and so do I. Because that's why I stayed, because I valued that. So it was just nice to see someone my age who has those values, which are seen as old-fashioned. And I always felt that I was kind of a fuddy-duddy in that way, but it's nice to find a fellow fuddy-duddy. But he's also he's funny. He's into technology and stuff like that. So he definitely has a modern side to him, but I love that he has those solid, old-fashioned values, which I share, which were in, and being polite and having kindness and presenting yourself well. And that means a lot to me. And I'm glad it's nice to see that there's someone else out there that it means a lot to them too. So thank you, Henry, for being you. I don't know if you're ever going to see this. I hope you do. Maybe people will share it and it'll get to you. But thank you for being you, and keep on being you and staying true to yourself, because it is so inspiring. Don't let the haters get you down. Don't let anyone get you down. And because you inspire so many people. And a little girl from West Philadelphia is totally inspired by you. So thank you for being you. And thank you for being my BFF in my head. You're a good sport. So anyway, in honor of him dressing up as Tigger, and I always end with a poem, I'm going to read you this poem by A.A. Milne, the person who wrote Winnie the Pooh. So it's called Us Two. Wherever I am, there's always Pooh. There's always Pooh and me. Whatever I do, he wants to do. Where are you going today, says Pooh. Well, that's very odd, 'cause I was too. Let's go together, said Pooh, says he. Let's go together, says Pooh. What's twice 11, I said to Pooh. Twice what? Said Pooh to me. I think it ought to be 22. Just what I think myself, said Pooh, said he. That's what it is, said Pooh. Let's look for dragons, I said to Pooh. Yes, let's, said Pooh to me. We crossed the river and found a few. Yes, those are dragons all right, said Pooh. As soon as I saw their beaks, I knew. That's what they are, said Pooh, said he. That's what they are, said Pooh. Let's frighten the dragons, I said to Pooh. That's right, said Pooh to me. I'm not afraid, I said to Pooh. And I held his paw and I shouted, shoo, silly old dragons. And off they flew. I wasn't afraid, said Pooh, said he. I'm never afraid with you. So wherever I am, there's Pooh. There's always Pooh and me. What would I do, I said to Pooh, if it wasn't for you? And Pooh said, true, it isn't much fun for one, but two can stick together, says Pooh, says he. That's how it is, says Pooh. So if you haven't found those people in your life, if you haven't found those true friends, if you haven't found your tribe, it's okay. I haven't found them either. And just the only thing you can do is stay true to yourself and become your own best friend. It's cliche, but it's true. You have to love yourself in order for you to be able to fully give to others and to receive the love and the friendship that you so deserve, that everyone deserves. I deserve, Henry deserved, everybody in this world deserves. So just stay true to yourself and be your own best friend. And you'll find your Pooh. You'll find your crew in the 100-acre wood, which is actually a really good place to be now because of Corona. So anyway, remember, keep on keeping on, live out loud,
and embrace your kaleidoscope soul. Bye, everyone.